Beyond the Gates spoilers next 2 week full January 12th to 23rd, 2026. At Fairmont Crest, appearances have always been carefully curated, perfected to project stability, wealth, and control. Yet beneath that polished surface, the next 2 weeks threaten to expose how fragile even the most powerful families truly are when confronted with the kind of truth that money, influence, and loyalty cannot erase. What begins as a series of medical tests quietly ripples outward, destabilizing relationships, igniting guilt, awakening fear, and creating the perfect opening for manipulation by those who thrive in chaos. Chelsea Hamilton and Naomi Hawthorne enter this chapter of their lives bound by an invisible thread of uncertainty, one that neither of them asked for yet neither can escape. The genetic screenings they undergo are not routine checkups or distant hypotheticals. They are loaded with the weight of inheritance, legacy, and the haunting possibility that the future may already be compromised at the cellular level. For Chelsea, the process is especially unsettling because it forces her to confront a truth she has long tried to keep at arm's length, that strength and optimism cannot override biology. The waiting becomes its own form of punishment, a suspended state where every memory, every ache, every family story suddenly feels suspicious. Naomi, meanwhile, experiences the test differently, not with denial, but with a creeping sense of inevitability. She understands that knowledge, once obtained, cannot be unlearned, and that the answer she receives may reshape how she sees herself, her body, and her choices moving forward. What unites both women is the silence between test and result, a silence filled with imagined futures that range from manageable to catastrophic. As Chelsea and Naomi navigate their private fears, Vanessa McBride faces a different kind of reckoning, one rooted not in her own body, but in her role as a mother. The updates she receives from her children do not arrive as simple reassurances. They arrive layered with concern, restraint, and the unmistakable awareness that Vanessa is being protected from information she may not yet be ready to hear. The dynamic subtly shifts, reversing roles in ways that leave Vanessa unsettled. She has always been the anchor, the protector, the strategist, yet now she senses that decisions are being made with her emotions in mind rather than her authority. This realization weighs heavily on her, forcing her to confront the limits of control in a family where love and fear coexist uneasily. The more she presses for clarity, the more she becomes aware that the truth, whatever it is, may demand sacrifices she is not prepared to make. At the center of Fairmont Crest, the Dupree family continues to present a unified front, but unity does not equate to peace. The coming days reveal that solidarity can be as exhausting as conflict when it is fueled by shared grief and collective fear. Anita Dupree's battle with breast cancer has already reshaped the emotional landscape of the family, drawing them closer even as it drains their reserves of strength. Her treatment is not just a medical journey. It is a daily reminder that time is no longer an abstract concept, but a resource that must be measured, protected, and rationed. Anita, ever perceptive, becomes acutely aware that her illness has shifted the family's center of gravity. Conversations revolve around her condition, her prognosis, her resilience, and while she appreciates the love surrounding her, she also recognizes the quiet burden it places on those who orbit her. That burden becomes heavier when Donnie Dupree's genetic test returns positive for markers associated with cancer risk. The result lands not as a single moment of shock, but as a sustained emotional aftershock that reverberates through every relationship Donnie holds dear. For Donnie, the knowledge introduces a profound internal conflict. She is not ill, not yet, but the certainty that her body carries a predisposition transforms how she perceives herself. Every future plan now feels conditional, every dream tinged with an unspoken question of longevity. The result strips away the illusion of invincibility she did not realize she had been relying on, replacing it with vigilance, fear, and a relentless awareness of what might come next. Donnie struggles to articulate these feelings, finding herself torn between wanting to remain strong for her family and needing space to process a truth that feels deeply personal and isolating. Nicole Dupree's reaction unfolds along a parallel but emotionally conflicting path. Her own test results come back negative, a relief that should have brought peace but instead delivers an unexpected surge of guilt. Nicole finds herself questioning why she was spared when her sister was not, why her future remains statistically safer while Donnie's has become uncertain. This survivor's guilt settles into Nicole's consciousness, complicating her attempts to support Donnie without appearing insensitive or dismissive. Every word she considers offering feels inadequate, every gesture potentially misinterpreted. Nicole begins to fear that her presence, her health, her very existence might unintentionally remind Donnie of the disparity between them. The strain of this unspoken tension threatens to erode the closeness they once took for granted, replacing it with careful restraint and emotional distance. For Anita, the convergence of her own cancer treatment and Donnie's genetic results pushes her to the brink of emotional exhaustion. She has spent weeks summoning strength she did not know she possessed, enduring physical pain while maintaining emotional composure for the sake of her family. Yet learning that Donnie now faces a heightened risk feels like a cruel extension of the battle she is already fighting. Anita grapples with the possibility that her illness has not only endangered her own life, but may have cast a shadow over her daughter's future as well. This realization fuels a deep sense of responsibility, bordering on self-blame, even as logic tells her that genetics are not a moral failing. The weight of this dual struggle forces Anita to confront her limits, acknowledging that resilience does not mean endless endurance. While illness and vulnerability dominate the emotional core of Fairmont Crest, danger also takes shape in quieter, more calculated ways. Joey Armstrong watches these developments closely, recognizing opportunity where others see only tragedy. To Joey, moments of crisis are openings, fractures in which influence can be inserted and control subtly asserted. His plan is not loud or reckless, it is patient, layered, and designed to exploit emotional distraction. As families turn inward to protect their own, Joey maneuvers outward, aligning resources, gathering information, and positioning himself where trust is thinnest. He understands that grief softens defenses, that fear clouds judgment, and that loyalty, when stretched afar, can snap without warning. Over the next 2 weeks, Fairmont Crest becomes a study in contrast. On the surface, there are gestures of unity, public displays of support, and reassuring narratives meant to preserve stability. Beneath that surface, however, private conversations grow heavier, silences lengthen, and suspicions begin to form. Chelsea and Naomi await answers that will redefine their sense of self. Vanessa navigates maternal concern with an increasing awareness that she may not be fully informed. The Dupree family holds itself together through sheer force of will as illness and genetic risk reshape their collective future. And in the shadows, Joey Armstrong advances a scheme that thrives on precisely this kind of vulnerability. What unfolds is not merely a series of plot developments, but a slow-burning transformation of Fairmont Crest itself. The gates that once symbolized protection now feel like barriers trapping fear within. The coming days promise revelations that will test loyalty, resilience, and moral boundaries, leaving no one untouched by the consequences of truth. As medical results collide with ambition and grief intersects with manipulation, one question looms larger than all others. When the illusion of control finally collapses, who will be prepared to face what remains? As Fairmont Crest braces itself for another wave of emotional and moral upheaval, the fragile equilibrium established in recent days begins to fracture under the weight of truth, loyalty, and calculated ambition. What initially appears to be a series of deeply personal cries, medical tests, family reckonings, and private fear slowly converges into a broader conflict shaped by power, resentment, and manipulation. At the center of this convergence stands Bill Hamilton, a man whose presence alone seems capable of turning already volatile situations into full-scale disasters. Early in the week, Chelsea Hamilton makes the difficult decision to inform Bill about the genetic testing and medical uncertainty surrounding their family. Her choice is rooted in a sense of responsibility, then reconciliation, and acknowledgement that regardless of past failures and emotional distance, Bill remains the father of her children and deserves awareness of potential risks that could affect them. Yet the moment this information reaches Bill, it becomes clear that transparency does not always bring clarity or comfort. Instead, it reopens old wounds, reignites unresolved guilt, and destabilizes the precarious boundaries that others have worked hard to maintain. Bill's reaction, shaped by denial and defensiveness, only compounds the tension, transforming Chelsea's attempt at honesty into another source of chaos. Andre Richardson observes this development with growing concern and diminishing patience. Unlike others who hesitate or second-guess themselves, Andre is known for decisive action when he believes lines have been crossed or boundaries violated. To him, Bill represents more than an inconvenient presence. He embodies a history of emotional harm inflicted upon Donnie, a history Andre has never fully forgiven or forgotten. As the implications of Donnie's genetic test results ripple outward, Andre's protective instincts intensify, sharpening into something far less forgiving. He becomes increasingly convinced that Bill's involvement, no matter how well-intentioned it might appear, threatens to destabilize Donnie at a moment when she is already struggling to process her own vulnerability. Ted Richardson reinforces this belief, urging Andre not to remain passive in the face of what he perceives as a looming threat. Ted's counsel is not born of impulsive anger, but of experience, a recognition that unresolved emotional entanglements often resurface at the worst possible times. He encourages Andre to draw a firm line, one that clarifies Bill's role and limits his influence. Andre takes this advice to heart, preparing to confront Bill with a truth that is both measured and unforgiving. Bill may remain present in the lives of his children, but his proximity to Donnie must end. This boundary is not presented as a negotiation or a suggestion, but as a necessary act of protection, one that prioritizes Donnie's emotional and psychological safety over Bill's lingering sense of entitlement. Meanwhile, Donnie finds herself pulled into yet another conflict, this time with Haley Hamilton, a clash that feels all too familiar in its tone if not its timing. The tension between them flares quickly, fueled by unresolved resentment and competing narratives of loyalty and blame. Haley, unwavering in her self-righteous certainty, insists that Donnie should finally step aside, urging her to let Bill go completely and seek comfort from her new husband instead. To Haley, this is framed as practical advice, even moral clarity, but beneath the surface lies a more insidious motive: control. Haley's insistence that Donnie disengage is not about healing, but about erasing competition, ensuring that Bill's emotional focus remains precisely where she wants it. This confrontation leaves Donnie shaken, not because Haley's words hold truth, but because they strike at a moment of profound vulnerability. Already grappling with the implications of her genetic test results, Donnie finds herself exhausted by the constant demand to be resilient, composed, and accommodating. The clash with Haley underscores a painful reality. Even in moments of genuine crisis, Donnie is still expected to manage other people's discomfort, jealousy, and insecurity. The burden becomes heavier as she begins to sense that Haley's influence over Bill is not merely emotional, but potentially dangerous. Indeed, Haley's behavior grows increasingly concerning as the week progresses. Her continued efforts to poison Bill both figuratively and, alarmingly, perhaps literally introduce a new layer of suspense and unease. Whether Bill begins to notice subtle changes in his health, perception, or emotional state remains uncertain. But the promotional hints surrounding these events suggest that the truth may not stay buried forever. Haley's confidence, once rooted in manipulation and secrecy, starts to border on recklessness, raising the possibility that her carefully constructed facade could soon collapse under the weight of her own actions. As Bill's world becomes more unstable, another player quietly prepares for legal and strategic maneuvering. Joey Lindstrom, ever attentive to shifting power dynamics, seeks legal counsel under the guise of due diligence. On the surface, his consultation appears tied to the free clinic project he has been pursuing alongside Doug McBride and Leslie Thomas, a venture framed as altruistic and community-focused. Yet those who know Joey understand that nothing he does is purely benevolent. Legal support, for Joey, is less about protection and more about leverage, a way to anticipate obstacles before they materialize and neutralize threats before they gain momentum. Questions begin to surface regarding the true purpose of Joey's legal preparations. Is he safeguarding the clinic initiative from regulatory challenges? Or is he laying groundwork for a more elaborate scheme that intersects with Bill's growing troubles and the broader unrest at Fairmont Crest? The timing suggests the latter, hinting that Joey may be positioning himself to exploit vulnerabilities exposed by illness, conflict, and fractured alliances. His calculated approach contrasts sharply with the emotional turmoil consuming others, making him all the more dangerous. Complicating matters further is the evolving relationship between Leslie Thomas and Detective Marcel Malone, a romance that takes a perilous turn as personal affection collides with professional obligation. What begins as a source of intimacy and escape gradually becomes a liability, exposing both to risks neither fully anticipated. As secrets accumulate and loyalties are tested, the line between trust and betrayal blurs, setting the stage for consequences that could extend far beyond their relationship. Together, these intersecting storylines transform Fairmont Crest into a pressure chamber where fear, ambition, and unresolved history collide. Chelsea's attempt at transparency with Bill triggers a chain reaction that empowers Andre's resolve, intensifies Donnie's vulnerability, and sharpens Haley's manipulative edge. Joey's quiet legal maneuvering hints at deeper machinations still hidden from view, while Leslie and Marcel's dangerous turn adds another unpredictable variable to an already volatile equation. Over the course of the next 2 weeks, the illusion of control that once defined Fairmont Crest continues to erode. Medical uncertainty strips away invincibility, old relationships resurface with destructive force, and calculated plans advance under the cover of chaos. As boundaries are drawn and crossed, one truth becomes increasingly clear. In a community built on appearances, it is the unseen decisions and unspoken motives that carry the greatest power. And when those forces finally converge, the fallout will leave no one untouched.